it makes all of that suffering feel so meaningless.
Gosh, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go run a marathon because you just jacked me up.
Welcome to We Are Human, the podcast that dives deep into the lives of those who work in medicine, but do not let medicine define them.
Each week, we're gonna bring you stories from healthcare professionals who are sharing their journeys, their victories, but also their pitfalls and their struggles and the ways that they have combated everything that they've gone through in their lives. But most importantly, the ways that they're staying human outside of the field of medicine.
Because while medicine is a big part of what we do, it is not all of who we are. Finally getting the podcast going. Tyler, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I am doing well. Like you said, I am just thrilled to get this podcast going as we've been talking about it for months now. And so today's day one. This is awesome. So Tyler, to get started, I guess our audience should know who we are. So do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm Tyler Beauchamp. I'm a pediatric resident and I'm also a children's young adult author.
Tyler, I know that's not all of who you are. Tell us more about yourself because you do some insane stuff, not only in the realm of medicine, but also outside of medicine.
I guess I should say that, we're doing this podcast about being in medicine and doing things outside of medicine. I don't really come from medicine. So growing up, I'm the son of a musician and a math teacher. And the last thing I wanted to do was going into the field of medicine because I had no frame of reference of what that could be. And in fact, I was actually a patient growing up for a long time, like being tossed around research clinics for like chronic pain evaluations. And I was a room kid. And so I actually had a really negative outlook on what healthcare could be. What I did want to do was I wanted to be a writer. I spent a lot of those times when I was in waiting rooms and traveling to different doctor's appointments, writing, both as a form of escapism, but also just because that was my passion at the time. My parents would kill me knowing this, but I did almost drop out of college to go screenwriting out west.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was
What?
I was this close. So I was that
Wow.
was that ridiculous kid in undergrad who changed their major maybe 12 times my first year alone, to the point where I would go into the registrar's office and they go, Tyler, you can't change it this month. You got to stick with it for at least a couple weeks because I just wanted to try everything under the sun. I really felt called to be a writer, and I, growing up, was really, really involved in like the filmmaking process and storytelling. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go out west. I'm going to be the starving artist. And the last thing I did before that was, well, the one profession I would not give any trial to was medicine because of my experience as being a patient. But prayed a lot about it, and I thought, well, before I go do this, let me just like give it a try. That way I can say no. And it was a total God moment. I think maybe 3 days into shadowing, I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I soon saw that my experiences as a patient may have been put on my life to be useful to some degree. But I did not want to give up writing. And I had no idea how I was going to keep those going together because it's not really a thing. Or at least it wasn't to me. And so we get fast forward, we're in med school. I start right before the pandemic hits, and we're all just struggling to find ways to stay sane and help out. And I had still been writing privately. No one in my life knew that I was a writer other than my roommates and my parents. But I felt really inspired by this story that was coming to mind from what I was seeing kids and adolescents go through in the pandemic. And I wrote this very like coming of age psych thriller about that, which is very odd how that even came to be. But here we are later, the book came out, and we could talk all about that. But that's from that moment on, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this combination, but that's what I'm going to do with my life now.
Tyler, that is incredible. Just the fact that you were able to navigate, I think, just two completely different worlds and then eventually bringing them together is pretty awesome.
I appreciate. Well, I mean, like that's bringing together two worlds, and to say that that's one thing versus here's Tommy who's bringing together 7, 9 different worlds. Like I when I tell people about you, And like, oh, Tommy Martin, I feel like every time I start describing you, I have to start in a different way because I forget about another thing that you're doing in your life. Um, and so I mean, you're certainly an inspiration to me for keeping things going when we're tired. Now,
Well,
tell
thanks,
everybody
man.
about like at least seven of the amazing things that you do with your life.
Oh my goodness. That was way too kind. Well, good segue to my introduction. My name is Tommy Martin. I'm a combined internal medicine and pediatrics physician, which is a very small part of who I am. More importantly, I'm a father to the most incredible kiddo in the world. His name is Oliver, who has an extremely rare genetic syndrome called Lamb-Schafer syndrome. So a lot of what I do is advocating for him and other children with special needs or developmental disabilities. I'm also a husband to my beautiful wife, Phoebe, who is now a Boston qualifier. She just qualified for the Boston Marathon last weekend. Let's go! It was so awesome. It was such a fun day. Outside of that, I am super active in resident education and medical education. And I just recently got into a fellowship where I will be working to develop a pretty large project in medical education, which I'm really excited about. Furthermore, as Tyler alluded to, I do a lot of other things such as fitness. I am an Ironman triathlete. I've qualified for the Ironman World Championship, the Ironman 70.3 World Championship, and I do a lot of running as well. And so I qualified for the Boston Marathon, and I will be running the Boston Marathon next Monday. So here, when you guys watch this episode, I have already ran it. So hopefully it goes very, very well. Other things outside of that, I'm also a personal trainer and a coach. So I have a small coaching business that I run on the side. And then inspired by Tyler and some of my other friends, I have started writing a children's book series, which will hopefully be published this fall, where I've written 12 children books. And over the course of the next year and a half, we'll hopefully have all 12 of them published. So that's me in a nutshell.
Listeners, there's going to be a test after to keep track of all of that because I still need to use like Anki to keep track of all the things that he does. Um, well, first off, two things. One, what a power family that you've got. Just the fact that y'all are doing everything in life together so well. I mean, it's beautiful to see and also incredible. I don't know how you're able to manage that, but I guess that's what happens when you've got the perfect life partner. Um, but
He is definitely a great life partner. And, so, I'd say why I think we are able to do a lot of what we do is because we do what we love. Like we're crazy passionate about exercise. So we exercise a lot, whereas other people may hate exercise and they don't want to exercise. So the things that we do fill us up and fill our cup and make us excited and ready to go back to work. So doing what you love makes everything not seem like much work.
I'm so glad you said that because that is a huge part of why we're even doing this podcast in the first place, and why this might be a little different podcast than you might see from other medical professionals. Um, I know you probably get asked this question all the time. I get asked a little bit too of like, hey, how are you able to do XYZ with medicine? Um, and while I understand that question, I think it's maybe the wrong question to ask because I usually say, how could I not? And when I haven't done the things outside of medicine that truly give me fire and give me energy, everything's harder. Everything takes longer to do. And so I joke around and call it the counterintuitive secret of it all is that it's not you make time for the things that you're passionate about. It's that when you make time for the things that you are passionate about, you make time for everything else. Um, and I often joke because when I first met Tommy, I did a piece on you about just I was writing stories, kind of like what this podcast is about, finding healthcare professionals around the country that did really weird, cool things. And part of that writing experience was very selfish for me because I was trying to find validation of, hey, can I still do this as a med student later on? Like, please tell me it's okay to do. Um, but also to show people that there are many people that do things so like the 99th degree outside of medicine to very privately at home outside of medicine. And one's not better than the other, but when they engage in those things, they're so much better off for it. Their patients are better off for it. Um, and when I first met Tommy, I first met you and I was interviewing you about all these things, the thought that came to my mind was, those like super toxic productivity people that go, like you can picture the things on social media where it's like black and white scale and the music's playing goes, every day I wake up at 2 a.m. I study for 24 hours and then I start my day. I cut my day. My days are 4 hours long. So by the time you've had one day, I've had six. Like, those like ridiculous, not helpful, toxic things. So, like,
Yeah.
and Tommy's not that. That's the thing. It's just, but he's telling me his schedule, the way he's waking up at 3 a.m., working out for 2 hours, spends time with family, goes to work, drives back. Like, and I was like, Tommy, you know, jokes aside and all that, like, how are you making time for this? And you kind of gave me that same answer, is that, well, I don't feel necessarily drained by them because they all give me energy. Like, I just do everything I do is something I love. So why wouldn't I do it? Which I think is a really, really profound and beautiful way to live life.
And something that I often say to people when they ask me this, they're like, how to stay excited about medicine and stuff. And I truly believe that your passions outside of medicine will keep alive your passion for medicine. So by me doing all these things that I love outside of medicine, when I go to work, like I'm jacked out of my face to be at work because like my cup is so full right now because I have just like filled it with everything that I love that I'm just ready to pour out to my patients, to the residents, the medical students, and usually like way too much. Like people are like, Tommy, calm down. Like it's not that great to be here. Like you can chill out. But it's like, no, like I'm so excited to be here. It's going to be a wonderful day. And so I feel that a lot. I think that you kind of described that pretty perfectly. I will say that if someone didn't know me, they would probably think that I'm portraying this toxic lifestyle that you must live, but it's truly my lifestyle, and that's just what I do to stay well. And it works for me. That doesn't mean it has to work for everyone, but it's truly what keeps me human outside of medicine, I'd say.
Yeah, and you're obviously you're huge on social media. You're showing you're constantly combating medical misinformation, but at the same time, you're just showing people how you live your life. And something I've always admired about the way that you use social media is you're unapologetically yourself all the time. Whether it's you just talking about what you're doing with your family that night, talking about maybe a bad training episode or a good training episode you had, um, medical misinformation, like everything under the sun, but it's exactly who you are in front of the camera and behind the camera. Which I think, yeah, if people just hear the schedule out loud, they may think that, but they watch one video with you. I promise that they'll be, oh, wait, no, he's different. That's different.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. I think that, the title of our podcast, We Are Human. And I think that a lot of that's what I try to portray on my social media is that because I feel like the healthcare system has tried to make doctors, especially throughout residency, into these robots that do not feel, that do not have life outside of medicine, that are literally just this robot programmed to do medicine. And we become a really good robot and we become great at doing medicine. But then we forget all of these things outside of medicine. So even on my social media, I want the world to see, like, look, I am human. I am not this robot that was programmed by the healthcare system to only care about medicine, right? Like, I have feelings. I have goals and aspirations. I have dreams that I want to accomplish. I have a family. And so even in the social media world, I portray that I am human and medicine is just a small part of my life that I also love.
Absolutely. I've sometimes said that maybe it's coming from not being in medicine, or not, like that was not my main goal desire growing up. But I've always seen medicine as sort of an avenue to do what I like to do for people rather than like the actual act itself. I think that's also why I fell in love with storytelling. Because when you can effectively move somebody to think differently, to live differently, and to help hopefully improve their lives, I think that that's one of the most beautiful things you can do as far as service. And I think that from the storytelling aspect, I that's why I love art so much, is that we can help people find things about themselves that maybe they didn't even know they had. And medicine, is just the other side of that coin. One of my favorite quotes of all time, that I actually even put at the front of my first book, was from Dead Poet Society. And to kind of say the quote, not fully, it's when Robin Williams is talking to his students at the beginning. And he goes on this diatribe about the meaning of life and poetry. And he says, medicine, law, business, these are all noble pursuits that are necessary to sustain life, but art is what we stay alive for. Stories are what we stay alive for. And so sometimes I've been asked, I'm sure you have too, like these things that we do outside of medicine, are those like distracting you from medicine? Are those pulling away from your time that you could be studying or, seeing more? You get those questions a lot. And I would argue that if those are the things that we're doing that help reach where medicine cannot reach, medicine can only go so far, and it can go really far. It can do amazing, incredible things. But for the aspects of medicine that can't heal, I believe that's where art can come in or humanism can come in. Which, I mean, that's why I don't think I could ever stop writing as I am now.
I love that so much. And, something that's so profound, I think that you were saying is that we know that medicine cannot heal all, right? And so something else that I say to my residents all the time is, oftentimes the most important things that you'll do in medicine have very little to do with medicine. And I think that's because that our bodies and our physical ailments, they are not eternal. Like we are going to pass away. We are going to die. And there's some illnesses that we cannot heal. But that does not mean we cannot heal someone's heart. That does not mean that we cannot provide them such great care that even in their physical ailments that they feel some sort of healing. And I think that's something that we want to bring about, with this podcast and just speaking to the future generations of doctors is that it's not just all about prescribing medicines and prescribing these things. There's so much more to medicine than medicine. And oftentimes the most important things have little to do with the medicine that we give.
Yeah. So something that, we're going to be bringing on for this whole podcast, we're going to be bringing on some really incredible guests throughout healthcare that are doing pursuits outside of medicine. Some of them to, the extreme, the 99th degree,
Yeah.
and some of them very much not so. And when I finished my first book tour and I started doing this lecture circuit around the country to like colleges and med schools, sort of about this topic about, maintaining your humanity and the passions outside of medicine. One problem I did not anticipate when starting that tour was how many times I was starting to get asked the question, well, hey, I love to sing, but I don't have a Spotify account, or like I love to write, but I don't have a book. And because the road to medicine and medical training is so regimented, and it is just fraught with so much fear, that the thought for so many people to take time to do something outside of what's proven, if it's not something you can put on your CV, or if it's not something that's publishable, why in the world would you spend any time other than what? Because it's scary. There's so many unknowns. And so some of those things I was saying I was doing, like writing the book or like making music, it actually got turned to a negative, because I think people that were interested in those pursuits that maybe didn't feel that they could go to that level of it were like, well, oh, then I might as well not even try. And so your point, and this is the story that I tell them, that so much of what we do in medicine has very little to do with actual medicine. I was with a med student who played guitar, and like just on their own, they don't record, they don't put it on social media, they just like playing at the end of the day. We are in a room with a very scared kid in the hospital, and the parents are scared as well. On the kid's backpack, he's got this little like guitar sticker thing that's jutting out. And the med student goes over and asks like, oh, do you like guitar? He goes, I really want to play one day. And the med student starts talking about, well, I play. And the kid's eyes just go wide. He goes, what kind of guitar do you have? And they showed pictures and we're talking about it. While the kid was talking to this med student, he got a shot and didn't realize he got a shot. The family's shoulders went down, and we started talking about, our next steps. And then the kid even started talking about some symptoms that we didn't even know he had had before. That story brings a couple things to light that are just vitally important. One, to all med students listening right now who feel sometimes on rotations that you're just like a warm body that's taking up space in a room, and like, what can I do to possibly contribute? That is so false. There's so much that you can do that residents and attendings can't do because you have the gift of time that we all wish we could have more of, but two, that med student wasn't going on Spotify. That med student wasn't going on tour performing to thousands of people. They play guitar for 10 minutes a day in their apartment. And because they did that, they vitally changed that kid's treatment plan and everything in the room. So, yeah, if you have something on your heart that's outside of medicine, to whatever degree that it is, I promise that if you engage in it, you're going to be better off for it. And very importantly, your patients are going to be much better off for it.
Yeah, I love that story so much, and I could not agree more. And so, as Tyler was alluding to before telling us that incredible stories, we're going to be having a lot of guests on here that is going to be telling us big parts of their career through medicine, their hardships. And so, we're going to be interviewing them with quite a few different questions. And so, I thought it'd be fun if Tyler and I kind of ask each other some of the questions that we're going to be asking some of our guests, just so you guys can get a little bit of a taste of what you guys are going to be experiencing with some of our guests. But before we do so, I thought it'd be fun if Tyler and I both answer a question. So Tyler, tell me what was the most medical student thing that happened to you when you were in your third year rotations?
Oh wait, okay, I've got one.
Okay.
I've got one. I've got one. I mean, I've got 100, but the first one that comes to mind, I still have medical student things that happened as an intern, so I won't even say, you know. Um, but no, one was okay, we're in the physician workroom. Um, I was getting pimped on some questions, and I actually was getting them right. And I felt like, oh, I'm feeling myself. Like I'm halfway through third year. Maybe I'm actually learning things, and I'm getting ready for fourth year. And I even threw out like a very good actual assessment and plan during a presentation. And I have like horrible stage fright with presenting. So it was like a day where I felt I was actually on top of my stuff. Um, and we got back to the workroom, and I was kind of getting pats on the back, like, "Oh, our med students like kicking butt. Yes, oh, this day I'm just on fire today." And then I got humbled real fast. I They were like, "Hey, Tyler, do you mind calling this family's physician because there's a medication that they were prescribed. It doesn't make quite sense why they were given this. There's nothing in their medical record as to what would necessitate that medication." I was like, "Oh yeah." So I'm on speakerphone with like the whole workroom around, and there's like the attending there, all the senior residents and the interns too, and I I call their doctor's office, and they answer and they go, hey, yes, name, date, and birth. And I was like, uh, I don't know why you need it, but Tyler Beauchamp, May 16th, 1986. Like they're asking for the patient, and they go like, we have no record of that. And I'm like dead frozen, and I can't believe I was doing that, and I didn't even know how to turn the conversation off. So what I did was on the phone with everyone looking at me and like holding back laughs. I go, look, I am going to do this. I'm going to hang up the phone. I'm going to go lay on the floor for a second, and then I'm going to call you right back. And then I do that, and I just like fetal position on the floor. And there was still like a picture of me, like when you get humbled real fast as a med student.
Oh my gosh, that is so great. I love that. Oh
Oh,
my
man. Stay humble,
God.
everybody.
Yeah, I wanted us to like answer this question to let all medical students know, like, you're not alone. Like, we've all been there, we've experienced this. So, one of mine would be during my first rotation as a third year medical student. And as you guys know by now, I'm like very high energy, like go, 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 type A personality. Like, let's go do this. Surgery rotation, gonna rock this. It's gonna be amazing. So, on cloud nine, super pumped because at the time I thought I wanted to be a surgeon. And so I get my list and my surgical patient that I'm going to see for the day and where I'm supposed to be at the OR, like at 5 in the morning, whatever time it was. And the physician that I was going to be with, I'd never met them. And so I go marching into the OR and, scrub up correctly, do all this stuff, and then get into the room. And the attending walks into the room and they're like, "What do you know about this procedure?" And so I start talking everything I studied about a lap chole, right? Like absolutely everything, just like from top to bottom, told everything. And then at the very end, the attending physician was like, Well, that was very good, but you're in the wrong OR. It's I was in the completely wrong OR room, ready to do a lap chole when that was not the procedure at all. And the attending physician didn't stop me. Like he just let me run through everything about a lap chole for like 10 minutes, and then at the end be like, "Very good, but you're in the wrong OR." Like, awesome.
I was perfect.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. All right. So, Tyler, let's get to some of the questions that we're going to ask some of our guests on the podcast. Do you want to start off and ask me a question? We'll go from there.
What was the moment when you realized that you did want to be a doctor?
Yeah, this is a long story, but I'll try to give you guys the cliff notes. So, growing up, I was going to be a teacher and a coach. I wanted to have the summers off or coaching during the summers and be out of school by 3 o'clock and be coaching football, basketball, and baseball. I'm going to tell you guys a little story that leads into the bigger story. But so, when I was around maybe 14 or 15, I worked with children with autism, which oddly enough, now I have a child with autism. Anyway, with when I was working with one of the children, I was leaving for the day, and there's this woman that walked up to me and said, "Hey, I need to tell you something, and I want you to record it on your phone." Didn't know who this woman was. Thought it was really creepy. I was like, "Okay, whatever." And this woman said, I believe God has plans for you that you're going to become a doctor one day and go to many nations and heal people in Jesus' name." And I was like, "Well, thank you, lady, but I'm going to be a teacher and a coach. Like that's my dream. That's what I want to do." But thank you so much. And so I recorded that on my phone. Didn't think about it again. So went through high school, graduated, the whole plan to be a teacher and a coach. And then my senior year, or when I graduated high school, I got a laptop from my uncle. My uncle bought me a brand new laptop as a graduation present. I was transferring everything over onto this new laptop. And when I did, I saw this audio file. I'm like, what is this audio file? So I play it, and it's this woman's voice that says that I believe that you're supposed to be a teacher, or that I believe that God's plans for you are that you're going to become a doctor and that you're going to go to many nations and heal people in Jesus' name. I'm like, no, there's like no way that's going to happen. Like, I'm going to be a teacher and a coach. Well, I went on a mission trip that summer, and on a mission trip to St. Louis, Missouri. And on this mission trip, they had an altar call like they do on every single mission trip. But I went down to get prayed for, and the pastor was praying over me, and he didn't know anything about me. He didn't know who I was. There's like 1,000 people in this auditorium. And as he was praying for me, he was praying that as I go off into college and go into pre-med, that I was going to become a physician and heal people in Jesus' name. And afterwards, I'm like, Pastor, like, you don't know, like I had plans to become a teacher and a coach. And all he said was keep an open mind. And so after that day forward, I, like reflected, reevaluated, and decided that, what? I think God's plans for me might be different, might be a harder path, might be something that I'm not sure if I could achieve, something that honestly scares me to death to even become, because I didn't come from a family of doctors. I didn't come, neither of my parents finished high school. And so it was definitely something that was really scary for me. But from that day forward, I decided I was going to become a physician, and I never looked back.
I think it says a lot about you too that, you know, you are able to put your trust in that process and a higher power and let it drive you. I mean, we know you're a driven person, but I think also it says a lot for your adaptability as a physician, as a father. We make plans and how we talk about like the regimented behavior of medicine and how people get set on a path and it's like, well, once I'm in it, here we go, and I'm not gonna deviate from that. um and it ironically, it's a pretty dangerous mindset to have as a physician. That's in your thought and your differential and your diagnostic approach. The more you do that, the more often you miss things that are crucial. So I think it's beautiful that the process that got you to this place was almost a daily practice. And I may have my plan, but life has other plans, and I'm here to adapt to what I believe I'm put here to do. And that may change. And I think that makes you a better doctor for it. I truly do. I think that having that mindset before coming into medicine and that just drastic life change so early on, I think that makes you a better provider for being able to stay so open minded and also just following your passion and that, because that following that drive, following God, following your drive, following your heart, that's going to keep you going far longer than any single moment in medicine.
Yeah, I agree. And, in medicine, we call it anchoring, like do not anchor on a diagnosis, like keep an open mind. And I think as you go throughout this career in medicine or even outside of medicine, it's so important not to anchor and just say, like, this is 1000% what I'm going to do or what I'm going to be or, whatever it may be. And so I think it is important not to anchor. And something else I'll say, because I mentioned my faith, we are human. And in medicine, you're going to come in contact with a lot of people who may have a different faith than you or may not have any faith at all. And all of that is completely okay. And so here on this podcast, you're going to see guests of all different faiths and backgrounds, or maybe no faith at all. And again, that is all what makes us human. And that is completely okay. And we can love and respect each other through that. And I think it's so important that we get to see insights of everybody's world and how they interact with the world and how they interact through the career of medicine. And so, Tyler, I have a question for you. So you kind of told us your pathway a little bit through medicine. Can you tell me a time in medicine, maybe your hardest time in medicine thus far and how you got through it?
I'll say the moment that I realized all of this was real, that all of this was really happening, I started med school and certainly took like a year to actually feel comfortable saying I was a med student. I'm now finishing intern year and still like, I'm still getting used to sometimes people saying, doctor and feeling like I'm not a med student, so it takes a while for things to progress to reality. I'll start off by saying this. Long before I was interested in medicine, I had this recurring dream for whatever reason that I was wearing scrubs. I would go into this like locker room and I would, change out of my scrubs and I saw this tattoo on my chest. And I knew instinctively what the tattoo meant. It was this amalgamation of the cross, the rod of Ecclesiastes, the medical symbol, and a semicolon for the semicolon mental health movement. And like, I don't know why I had that. And that dream, it just kept going. It kept happening. And even in college, I was having that dream when I was like thinking about, oh, I need to get this next written piece out when I was getting ready to drop out of college. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, the dream
I thought
being
you said
more.
you guys drop out of college and then you have that dream that night and you're like, oh, can't drop out of college now.
I mean, like the more I was getting like comfortable with the decision of dropping out of college, the more frequent I was having that dream.
Wow, that's crazy.
And I'm like, I didn't have any, like propensity to think like, I don't know. It was just so odd to me because I don't have anyone in my life that was in medicine. So why am I having this recurring dream? Um, anyway, fast forward to when I do check out that side of the curtain, um, and I fall in love with medicine. Well, the dream keeps happening faster and faster. And eventually, we can talk about it later too. I have long struggled myself with anxiety, depression, self-harm. That it really does go back for most of my life. And the crux of that struggle happened later. Like it happened towards the end of college and the start of med school. So having this tattoo that has this symbol of a movement to keep going on, I don't know why I had that at the time. Because that those certain struggles weren't necessarily on my heart at the time. Um, and eventually, as things were getting real in med school and I'm finding my purpose in med school and I'm working through and finding, the healing process of like my own mental health struggles. And, faith being the greatest driver of anything in my life throughout life. That was the only part of the tattoo I ever understood when I first started having it. Um, Eventually I told myself, look, if I stick with medicine, if I ever feel like this is truly real, I might have to get that tattoo because it's like all these aspects are coming together in this weird, almost like futuristic message to me. um, and fast forward to third year of med school. To answer your question, I had moved back in with my grandparents. After the pandemic, they both came up with separate cancers. My grandfather, he's fine. He's got prostate cancer, and he recovered, very fast from it. My grandmother had cholangiocarcinoma, And so I moved back in with them to help out and take care of them. But I also have, rotations and, med school struggles. And so it was a difficult time in my life. It was definitely the hardest time in medicine so far to go in. You're trying to perform as a third year. You come home and I'm taking care of, two people. And then you also have to study. And it's just, I felt like I was drowning. And one moment where um, my grandmother had a bad night, I was able to help her out, and my entire extended family was there. And I remember coming out of the room and all of them looking at me the way that, patients, families look at us now. And that was the first time that it ever happened. But when it's your family, that's different. And I think, there's a reason why doctors shouldn't, take care of their loved ones when they're in the hospital. But I think it was a collective realization that we now had a doctor in our family. Or and for whatever I really knew as a third year med student, I knew enough to be able to educate them and help them understand what was happening to my grandmother at the time. And as you know, understanding a thing is so powerful, even if it's not actually treating the thing. To have knowledge, it takes away so much fear. Um, it was such a crystallizing moment that we all shared that fundamentally changed the way my family is today. That the very next morning I went out and got that tattoo. Like, and
Wow.
like, yeah. And I think back to 17, 18-year-old Tyler getting that recurring dream and how all of those pieces came together in ways that I could not have anticipated. And that was the moment it all became real.
Wow, that is so incredible and so powerful. And Tyler, you touched on so many crazy important things throughout that story. And some of it would be mental health battles. There's such a stigma behind medical providers and medical students, residents having mental health issues. And again, we are human and we struggle too. And many of us have anxiety, depression, all these thoughts. And if we could even talk about the suicide rates of physicians, it's crazy high and continues to rise. And so I think all of these things are so, so important. And man, I applaud you and I thank you for being so vulnerable because I think your story could definitely help many others that may be struggling with those same things. And I think one of the most important things that we could say to anybody in medicine that is struggling, please do not be afraid to reach out for help. Like it is 100% okay that if you're struggling to ask for help and get the help that you need. Because medicine is hard. And if you're struggling with mental health issues, medicine can exacerbate it. It can make it a lot worse, especially during residency. And so do not be afraid to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah. And we talk about it a lot, but a lot of times when you're in the process of medicine and training, you're so patient focused. You're so thinking about like what can I do for others and how can I take care of them. And we often argue to ourselves to not take care of ourselves because we sometimes we can even view it as selfish. Um,
Right.
but you can't pour from an empty cup, and it is the furthest thing from selfish to make sure that you're taking care of yourself because you think about if you are not out there practicing to the fullest of your ability, if you are not out there caring and listening to the fullest of your ability, think about how many people are worse off for it. So
Right.
the time that you take to take care of yourself is truly an act for others in medicine.
Yeah, so true. All right, Tyler, what question do you have for me?
Okay. When I met Tommy, we did this push-up contest. Very hard pivot on this conversation, by the way. And I like to think I'm in shape. I like to think I'm in shape. I turned my dining room into just a gym, so I don't even have a table anymore. I sit on my bench as like my chair. Um, and like
So that's
I like
after you lost the push-up challenge to me. No more, no more.
training for. I'm just training for the rematch, man. Like this whole podcast, this friendship, this is all fake. This is just me getting you off guard. If I can get you talking long enough to where you're not training one day, I'm actually doing push-ups while we're talking. Um, no, we did this push-up contest, and I think Tommy probably could have written a book and played with this kid and I don't know, taken a nap while he was doing the push-up contest and so on. So I get that we've talked a lot about Tommy about how you doing the things that you love gives yourself energy, but but realistically, what do you do on those days when you need to be training for the upcoming marathon, the upcoming Ironman, and you've maybe had like a really, really bad day in the hospital or things have happened at home, like, and you still got to get up and work out for those 2 hours, not just working out, like an insane level of vigor that you post about and you talk about. Those days, I want to hear more about how do you get yourself going when you are just absolutely drained?
Yeah, of course. So I'm trying to answer this as honestly as possible and not sound like a maniac. But so truthfully speaking, there's not that many days that I feel like that. I think this is partly that I'm naturally very energetic. Just like my baseline level of mood is like crazy high energy. So there's not very many days that I feel like that, but some examples maybe after maybe I did a 36-hour shift or a 48-hour shift or things of that nature that I just did not get much sleep. And so maybe running off of 2 to 3 hours of sleep for prolonged days, I definitely get wore down. And so there's a couple different ways that I'll frame this. So one, I think to answer your question directly would be like, how do I keep going when there's no motivation there? And so to me, that would be that I never rely on motivation. Like the desire and want that I have to something never dictates if I do it or not necessarily, because underlying, I'm only like big picture, I'm only doing things that I'm passionate about. So whatever it is in front of me, I know that if I do those things, it's actually going to energize me and give me life back, even if in that exact moment I do not feel like it, right? So I've already set the stage to do things that are going to give back to me. And then the second thing would be I never think about my current energy level and if I could do it or not, but rather I think about how dedicated am I to the task at hand. So one example would be if I worked a long shift and my kiddo is wanting to play with me, I could say, no, I'm too tired. I'm not going to play with you. I am just going to take a nap. And if you need a nap, take a nap. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but in my mind, I rather think about I'm really dedicated to Oliver and he's only going to be awake for another hour. So I'm going to play with him tired for that hour. And it's not only going to give me life back, but fulfill him as well. And so I stay dedicated to the things that matter and do not allow motivation to dictate how dedicated I am towards the task. Because life is going to happen. Life is going to throw curveballs at you and you are going to go through hell one way or another. And if you allow your feelings or you allow motivation to dictate whether you will do things or not, you will never do anything because life will continually happen. So I keep in the forefront of my mind about the things that I'm dedicated to, which are things that I'm passionate about, which are things that give me life. And regardless of how I feel each and every day, I make sure that I stay dedicated to those things. And now they may change. Like, so let's say I had a 48-hour shift or a 36-hour shift and I'm supposed to do a 20-mile long run. Maybe that 20-mile long run with hard efforts turns into a 20-mile run at easy effort. Or maybe it turns into a 10-mile run at easy effort. So I still change and modify to make sure I protect my body, protect, prevent injuries and things of that nature, but I still stay dedicated to the task at hand. So I think that's a roundabout question or answer to answer your question.
Love the way you talked about setting the stage. Um, and honestly, I've never thought about it that way before with not being like motivation, not being your motivation. It's such a wild concept, but it's beautiful that, yeah, I've chosen that these are the things in my life that are non-negotiables. These are the things in my life that I know, no matter what, bring me joy, bring me peace, bring me love, bring me energy. So even if I'm not enjoying like the transient now, I know that engaging in them long term is only going to be better off for me and the people that I love. Um, I might have to take that in my book a bit,
Yeah.
because that's pretty beautiful.
I love that. And so one other thing to kind of like relate this back to medicine or in your everyday life, like I said, you're going to go through hell, right? Like that's a guaranteed, that's a given. Life happens, it's going to hurt, whatever it may be. And so some of my favorite things that I live by every single day and apply to every aspect of my life is to find joy in suffering. And people don't really understand what that means. And I think to find joy in suffering is really the secret, I think, to how I do everything in my life. And so find joy in suffering through exercise that helps me to achieve my goals, find joy in suffering throughout residency, knowing that that suffering is for a purpose. And that purpose is that it's going to create in you endurance, perseverance, and character. And all of that suffering is not meaningless. And once it produces all of those things, it's going to make you the best doctor that you could be. It's going to make you that Boston qualifier like it did for my beautiful wife. It's going to make Oliver be able to walk, even though he has special needs and wasn't able to walk. It's going to make him and help him be able to talk, even though he was told he was not able to talk. Like all of that suffering can have great purpose, and you can find joy in that suffering if you point that suffering towards the reward at the end. So in residency, a lot of times you're like, oh my gosh, I have so many notes to write, or medical school, you're thinking about all the studying you have to do. Like, is it worth it? Well, if you think about the time that you're going to have at the bedside with the patients, and you think about those magical moments and those encounters that you've been longing for and dreaming of, it makes all of that suffering feel so meaningless.
Gosh, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go run a marathon because you just jacked me up. Like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful, man. I couldn't agree more. I often joke with my co-residents and my friends that I just love embracing masochism. I think to some extent, just going medicine, you have to, right? Because what an insane thing to do in your life as far as the time commitment, the things like your daily normal just completely changes. I was catching up with my friends who were outside of medicine the other weekend, and they just asked like how my day was. I got off a shift, and I was like, do I really tell them? I don't know. This might be not the best dinner conversation, but that's your normal now. So there's definitely that extent of just, you know, finding the comfort or finding the peace in the suffering, in medicine and outside of it. Especially if you're cultivating, pretty significant, um, time demanding things outside of medicine. It reminds me of a story when I was writing my first book. I spent one day in particular. I think I wrote 15 hours straight. I didn't even get up from my laptop. I was just so in the zone. And I come out of my room, and all my roommates at the time was like, "Are you good, man? Are you alive? What?" Um, and I showed them like, "Guys, I've got to show you what I came up with. This is perfect." And I showed them like a single page document, after 15 hours. And they were like, are you good, man? Uh, and I was like, no, 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 you don't get it. So I actually wrote like almost 12,000 words in this time. And they go, is it the rest of it in your room? And no, I wrote about 12,000 words. I just deleted about 11,500 of them. And but these 500 words are just gold, and they're going to go in the final version. And to a writer, that process, it's so normal to me. Like that makes sense to me. And lo and behold, that page was in the final version.
Wow.
But I think it also goes to show that I found 1,500 words of material that I didn't want included. And that moment and that experience, I kind of try to stress to others that, if we look so much at the end goal, like the actual physical products of what we can produce with our time, sometimes it can be more daunting than to think about all of the no's that you get, all of the failures that you get, all of the experiences that you sink time into that come to nothing, or that, don't come to the end that you want. Those are just as meaningful and just as important as the successes, because you couldn't have gotten those 500 words without the time. If I didn't sit down for those 15 hours, I wouldn't have gotten the 500 words that I needed. And with everything else that we do, like if you didn't have that bad training session, if you didn't, even like if it was, you still got the miles in, but it wasn't quite what you needed. If you decided, I'm not feeling it today. I'm kind of losing train on the end goal that gives me passion. Maybe you make that decision again tomorrow, and that decision again tomorrow. And then pretty soon, you're no longer thinking about, I don't think the Boston Marathon's for me. It's those micro decisions that add up. And honestly, the failures, the things that we do that we spend time on that don't have, again, to stress, things that aren't necessarily on your CV, things that aren't necessarily, tangible to people. That time is so valuable no matter what.
Yeah. That is so incredible, and I could not agree more. I think you worded everything so perfectly. So Tyler, I know that we do not have a ton of time left for our pilot episode of the We Are Human podcast. So I thought we could just end with one more question. And I guess it'll be, what does being human mean to you?
I'd say, again, going back to why I said medicine is kind of an avenue of what I like to do with people and what I want to do with my life more than the field itself. I think fundamentally being human is engaging in the things that are placed on your heart for whatever reason that almost feel out of your control. I think we all have things that we are passionate about that are a combination of life experiences, but God, of the way that we're designed. Being human is all about giving in to those desires, those passions that make us feel whole, that make people feel loved, that make us feel that this life is, worth living. And because they're all so wonderfully unique, like no matter what yours are to someone else's, it's vital. It's vital for humanity that you pursue those for yourself because everyone's gonna be better off for it. Um, so being human is all about taking the time to be introspective, find the things that were placed on your heart, give time to them, and ultimately finding a way of using them to bring that out of others, whether it's, a similar passion, whether it's different, to do whatever you can to make the people you run into, their lives just like a little bit better before you leave them. That's what it's all about.
I love that so much. And if I were to say what it means to be human, it's very similar to what Tyler just said, and that is giving into the passions that have been placed on your heart that makes you feel alive, and then finding a way to leave a positive impact around everyone around you. Um, Incredible. I think that's it for the first episode, Tyler.
We did it, man. We did it. I can't believe we're going. Guys, audience, we have been talking about this for so long, ever since I lost push-up contest to Tommy back in the day. Um, and maybe one day I will just do a podcast and live streaming push-ups again. But
Push-ups.
this has been a blast, Tommy. I'm so glad that we are starting this up. I'm so excited to get these conversations going. I can't wait for everybody listening. I cannot wait for you to see some of the guests we have lined up because their stories are just beyond incredible. And I want to give also a special thanks to the Hippocratic Collective, who's helping get this podcast going and get these stories out there. You can find our podcast and other shows like ours on hippocratic-collective.com. Be sure to check them all out. But Tommy, this has been a blast. I can't wait to see where this journey keeps going.
I agree, man. Love you. We'll see you next time. Thanks everybody for listening.